I stared at the man standing before me, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. My elderly husband, the man I'd married just hours ago, had just removed his mask, and the face staring back at me belonged to someone young, someone devastatingly handsome, someone around my own age with piercing green eyes that seemed to see straight through me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. This was supposed to be simple. Marry an old, sick man, stay married for 1 year, get paid enough money to save my family. But the person standing in front of me wasn't old, wasn't weak, and judging by the calculating look in those green eyes, he definitely wasn't sick. My legs felt like they might give out. What? Who? The words died in my throat because I genuinely had no idea what to say. What do you say when your entire reality shatters in a single moment? But let me back up. Let me tell you how I ended up in this nightmare. 3 weeks ago, I was working my third job of the day, mopping floors in an office building downtown at 11 o'clock at night. My feet ached. My back screamed. I'd been awake for 19 hours straight, moving from my morning shift at the cafe to my afternoon shift at the clothing store, and finally to this pushing a mop across empty hallways while everyone else was home sleeping. I didn't complain, though. I couldn't afford to complain. Every dollar I earned went straight to keeping my family afloat. My father needed medicine. My little brother needed school supplies. Grace, my 15-year-old sister, needed new shoes because hers had holes in them, though she never mentioned it. We were drowning, and I was the only one swimming hard enough to keep us all above water. That night, I got home at midnight and found 6 missed calls from my mother. My stomach dropped before I even listened to the voicemail. You know that feeling when you just know something terrible has happened? That's what hit me. Lily, it's your father. He collapsed. We're at Memorial Hospital. The doctors say he needs surgery immediately. Please come. I don't remember the cab ride to the hospital. I don't remember running through the emergency room doors. All I remember is the doctor's face when he told me the surgery would cost $200,000. And without it, my father had maybe 3 months to live. $200,000. I made about $30,000 a year working 3 jobs. I had $800 in my savings account. My mother hadn't worked since she broke her hip last year. We had nothing. No assets. No insurance that would cover this kind of surgery. Nothing. I sat in that hospital waiting room and cried until I had no tears left. Then I just sat there, numb, trying to figure out how to save someone I loved when I didn't have the power to do it. That's when he appeared. A man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase, looking completely out of place in the fluorescent-lit waiting room at 2 a.m. He sat down next to me like we'd planned to meet there. Miss Chen? My name is Mr. Wesley. I represent someone who would like to make you an offer. I should have walked away. Any sane person would have. But desperate people don't think like sane people. He laid it out simply. His client, Mr. Theodore Blackwood, needed a wife. Not for love, not for companionship, just for 1 year, for legal reasons he couldn't fully explain. In exchange, I would receive $500,000, plus all medical expenses for my family covered immediately. The catch? I had to decide within 24 hours. I had to sign papers agreeing never to discuss the arrangement, and I had to marry a man I'd never met. Why me? I asked. Mr. Wesley smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because you need help, and you're the kind of person who keeps their promises. My client values loyalty above everything else. I went home that night and didn't sleep. I paced my tiny apartment, weighing my options. This could be a trap. It could be dangerous. It could be a million terrible things. But my father was dying. At sunrise, I called Mr. Wesley and said yes. 2 days later, I met my future husband for the first time. The meeting was held at his mansion, and calling it a mansion doesn't do it justice. It was the kind of place you see in movies about rich people, with gates and gardens and rooms that echoed when you walked through them. A butler named Harrison led me to a sitting room where Theodore Blackwood waited in a wheelchair. He wore a mask that covered most of his face, showing only his eyes. He wore gloves, too. His voice, when he spoke, was raspy and weak, like talking took effort. Thank you for coming, Miss Chen. "Thank you for helping my family," I managed to say. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. He asked about my father. I asked why he needed to get married. He gave vague answers about business and legal requirements. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was playing a part in someone else's life. He seemed kind, though. Tired and sick, but kind. I told myself I could do this. 1 year of my life in exchange for saving my father. People had done worse for less. The wedding was small. Just me, Theodore in his wheelchair and mask, Harrison, Mr. Wesley, and a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I wore a simple white dress my mother had helped me pick out. Theodore wore a black suit that hung loose on his thin frame. We said our vows. I promised to love and honor a stranger. He slipped a ring on my finger that probably cost more than everything I'd ever owned combined. The judge pronounced us married, and then I moved into the mansion that same day. Harrison showed me to our bedroom, a massive space with a 4-poster bed that could fit 5 people. He told me Theodore would join me later, that I should make myself comfortable. I sat on the edge of that enormous bed, still wearing my wedding dress, and tried not to panic. This was my life now, at least for a year. When the door finally opened and my husband rolled in, still wearing his mask, I stood up nervously. "You don't have to be afraid," he said in that raspy voice. "I know this situation is unusual. That's one word for it," I replied, trying to smile. He moved closer, and I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. "I want to be honest with you about something, Lily. May I call you Lily?" I nodded. "I haven't been entirely truthful about who I am." My heart started pounding. "What do you mean?" He reached up slowly and removed his mask. That's when time stopped. When my entire world tilted sideways. When I stopped breathing and just stared. Because the face looking back at me belonged to a man maybe 26 years old, with strong features, dark hair, and those impossible green eyes that were watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "What?" I took a step backward. "What is this? Who are you?" "My name is Daniel," he said, and his voice was completely different now, strong, young, confident. "And I need to explain something before you run." But I was already backing toward the door, my mind racing. This was a trap. This was insane. This was... "If you leave this room right now," Daniel said quietly, "your father's surgery gets cancelled in exactly 10 minutes. My hand froze on the doorknob. My hand stayed frozen on that doorknob like it was glued there. Behind me, I could hear Daniel breathing, waiting for my response. My mind was screaming at me to run, to get out of this house, and away from this man who'd been lying to me from the very beginning. But my father's face kept flashing in my mind, pale and weak in that hospital bed, machines beeping around him. "You're threatening me," I said, my voice shaking with anger instead of fear now. I turned around slowly to face him. "You lied about everything, and now you're threatening my father's life to keep me here?" Daniel had the decency to look uncomfortable. He ran a hand through his dark hair and sighed. "I'm not threatening you. I'm stating a fact. The payment for your father's surgery is conditional on you fulfilling the contract. If you walk away, the contract is void. That's the definition of a threat." I shot back. "Fine. Yes, it's a threat." He walked past me and sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. Without the mask and the old man act, he was just a young guy who looked like he hadn't slept properly in months. "Sit down. Please. Let me explain everything, and then you can decide what you want to do." "I'll stand, thanks." He nodded, like he expected that. "My real name is Daniel Blackwood. Theodore Blackwood was my grandfather. He raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 7. He was the only family I had, and despite being difficult and demanding, he loved me in his own way." "Okay," I said slowly, my hand still on the doorknob. "What does that have to do with you pretending to be him?" "He died 2 years ago." I blinked. "What?" "Heart attack. Sudden. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived." Daniel's voice was flat, like he'd told this story before but it still hurt. "And I made a decision that night that I've been living with ever since. I decided not to report his death." "Why would you do that?" Daniel stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark gardens. "Because of my uncle, Vincent Blackwood. He's Theodore's younger brother, And he's been waiting for decades for Theodore to die so he could take over the family company. But my grandfather knew what kind of man Vincent was: greedy, cruel, willing to destroy everything just to get richer. So Theodore set up his will very carefully. I was starting to understand, but it sounded insane. What did the will say? That control of Blackwood Industries would pass to me on my 27th birthday, provided that Theodore was still alive and married at the time. If Theodore died before I turned 27, everything would go to Vincent instead. But your grandfather died when you were what, 24? 25? 24. Daniel turned back to face me. I had 3 years to wait. 3 years where if anyone found out Theodore was dead, Vincent would take everything. The company, the money, the houses, all of it. And worse than that, Vincent would destroy what my grandfather built. He'd sell off the parts, fire thousands of people, and pocket the cash. I shook my head, trying to process this. So you've been pretending to be your dead grandfather for 2 years? Yes. He said it simply, like it wasn't completely crazy. I used makeup artists, voice modulators, the wheelchair, the mask. I made very few public appearances. Harrison helped me. He's the only one who knows the truth. Or was. Until you. This is insane, I whispered. I know. And illegal. Very, very illegal. I know that too. I finally let go of the doorknob and took a few steps into the room, though I kept my distance from him. Why did you need to get married? That part doesn't make sense. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed me a document. This is a clause my grandfather added to his will 3 years before he died. It says that Theodore Blackwood must be married at the time of the transfer of power. If he's unmarried, control goes to Vincent regardless of my age. Why would he add that? I don't know. Maybe he wanted to make sure I'd settle down. Maybe he wanted to make it harder for Vincent to challenge the will. Maybe he just liked making things complicated. Daniel's jaw tightened. But it means that before my 27th birthday in 11 months, Theodore Blackwood needed to get married. Which is where you came in. My legs suddenly felt weak. I sat down in a chair near the window, as far from Daniel as I could get while still being in the same room. Your lawyer found me, Mr. Wesley. He looked for someone desperate enough to agree. Yes, someone who needed money so badly they wouldn't ask too many questions. Yes, the anger came flooding back. You used me. You used my father's illness, my family's situation, my desperation. You manipulated all of it to get what you needed. Daniel didn't deny it. He just stood there, watching me with those green eyes that seemed too honest for someone who'd been lying about his entire identity for 2 years. You're right. I did. I needed someone who would sign the papers, play the part, and keep quiet. Wesley found your father's medical records, saw how much debt your family was in, and knew you'd be perfect for what we needed. Perfect, I repeated bitterly. Like I'm some kind of object you could just buy. I never thought of it that way, but yes. That's exactly what I did. I bought your cooperation with money you desperately needed. He sat back down on the bed, elbows on his knees, looking at the floor, if it helps at all. I'm not proud of it. But I was running out of time and options, and I did what I had to do to protect what my grandfather built. We sat in silence for a long moment. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to walk out, to hell with the money and the consequences, but another part, the part that had been taking care of my family for years, knew I couldn't do that. My father was in surgery right now because of this arrangement. Grace needed stability. My mother needed support. I was trapped, and Daniel knew it. So what happens now? I finally asked. Now we continue with the plan. You live here as my wife, as Theodore's wife, for the next 11 months. We make occasional public appearances together. You play the part of the devoted young woman who married an old man. And when I turn 27, the company officially becomes mine. Vincent loses his claim, and you get the rest of your payment. And then we quietly divorce. You go back to your life, and we never see each other again. It sounded simple when he said it like that. 11 months. I could survive anything for 11 months if it meant my family would be okay. Does anyone else know about this? Besides Harrison and your lawyer? No one. What about your uncle? Does he suspect? Daniel's expression darkened. Vincent has always been suspicious. He knows something isn't right, but he can't prove it. As long as we're careful, he won't be able to. His phone rang, cutting him off. He looked at the screen, and his face went pale. It's Harrison, he answered, putting it on speaker. Harrison's usually calm voice was tight with tension. Sir, we have a situation. Your sister called. Someone broke into their apartment about 20 minutes ago. My stomach dropped. Grace? Is Grace okay? She's fine, Miss Chen. She wasn't home at the time. But the intruder was asking the neighbors questions about you and your sudden marriage. And they left a message on the apartment door. What message? Daniel asked. Harrison's pause felt like it lasted forever. It said, Tell your sister the truth always comes out. I felt the blood drain from my face. Daniel stood up quickly, already moving toward the door. Get the security team on it. I want. The lights went out. All of them. The entire mansion plunged into complete darkness. In the sudden silence, I heard something that made my heart stop. Footsteps in the hallway outside our bedroom door. Slow, deliberate footsteps. And they were getting closer. Daniel's hand found my arm in the darkness. His grip was tight, urgent. His voice was barely a whisper against my ear. Don't make a sound. They're already here. Daniel's fingers wrapped around my wrist, pulling me forward through the pitch-black room. I couldn't see anything. Not the furniture, not the walls, not even my own hand in front of my face. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure whoever was in the hallway could hear it. I stumbled, my shin hitting something hard, but Daniel caught me before I could fall. His other hand pressed against what I thought was the wall, and then I heard a soft click. A hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow passageway lit by dim emergency lights. Inside. Now, he whispered. I didn't argue. We slipped through the opening just as I heard the bedroom door handle rattle. Someone was trying to get in. Daniel pulled the hidden door closed behind us, sealing us into a cramped space that smelled like dust and old wood. What is this? I breathed. Secret passage. My grandfather had them built throughout the house decades ago. He was paranoid about corporate spies. Daniel was already moving forward, one hand trailing along the wall. Stay close to me. These passages are like a maze if you don't know them. We walked through the narrow corridor, the emergency lights creating strange shadows on the walls. Behind us, I heard a loud crash. They'd broken through the bedroom door. My hands were shaking. Who are those people? Vincent's men. Most likely. He must have figured out something was wrong and decided to search for proof. Daniel stopped at a junction where 3 passages split off in different directions. He chose the middle one without hesitating. If they find evidence that Theodore is dead, everything falls apart. You mean we fall apart? I'm legally married to a dead man, Daniel. That makes me part of your fraud. He glanced back at me, and even in the dim light, I could see the guilt on his face. I know. I'm sorry. I should have prepared you for this possibility. You think? My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I was too scared to care about being polite. Maybe you should have mentioned that marrying you could land me in prison. We kept walking, the passage sloping downward. I could hear sounds above us, furniture being moved, doors slamming, voices shouting. They were tearing through the mansion looking for something. Finally, Daniel stopped at a heavy wooden door. He pressed his palm against a panel beside it, and I heard electronic beeps. A hidden scanner. The door swung open to reveal a small office I'd never seen before, windowless and tucked deep in what must have been the center of the mansion. A wall of security monitors flickered to life as we entered, showing camera feeds from all over the house. I watched in horror as 3 figures in black masks moved through the mansion systematically. They weren't being subtle, they were ripping open drawers, pulling books off shelves, checking behind paintings. One of them was in our bedroom right now, searching through the closets. Oh my God, I whispered. Daniel sat down at the desk and started typing on the computer, pulling up different camera angles. Look, there's Harrison. On one of the monitors, I saw the butler calmly walking into the main parlor, where 2 of the masked figures had gathered. He was carrying a silver tray with teacups, acting like everything was completely normal. Good evening, gentlemen. Harrison's voice came through the speakers. "I thought you might enjoy some refreshment while you conduct your inspection." One of the masked men knocked the tray from his hands. Tea and porcelain shattered across the floor. "Where is he? Where's Theodore?" Harrison didn't even flinch. "Mr. Blackwood is resting, as his doctor has ordered. I'm afraid he cannot be disturbed." "We'll see about that." The man shoved past Harrison, heading toward the stairs. But Harrison had bought us time. Daniel was already pulling up more files on the computer, looking for something. "What are you doing?" I asked, checking to see what they might find. "All of Theodore's important documents are in a safe deposit box off-site, but if they find anything that proves I'm not who I say I am..." He trailed off, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I sank into a chair, trying to process everything. Just hours ago, I was getting married. Now I was hiding in a secret room while criminals searched the house. My life had turned into something impossible. "Tell me more about your grandfather," I said suddenly. I don't know why I asked. Maybe I just needed to focus on something other than the fear. Daniel looked up from the computer, surprised. "Why?" "Because I'm married to him, apparently. Or to you, pretending to be him. I should know something about the man whose name I took." He was quiet for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. Theodore Blackwood was brilliant. He built Blackwood Industries from nothing, started with a single manufacturing plant and turned it into a company worth billions. But he was also difficult, demanding. He expected perfection from everyone around him, especially himself. Sounds lonely. It was. He drove away most of the people who cared about him, including my grandmother. She left him when my father was 10. My father grew up resenting Theodore, which is probably why he moved across the country as soon as he could. Daniel's voice got quieter. "After my parents died, Theodore was the only family I had. He wasn't warm or affectionate, but he taught me everything. How to run a business, how to read people, how to protect what matters." "Is that why you're doing this? To protect what he built?" "Partly, but also because I know what Vincent would do with it. He'd sell everything, fire thousands of people who depend on their jobs, and pocket the money. Blackwood Industries supports entire communities. If it falls apart, those communities fall apart too." I looked at the monitors again. The masked figures were in the study now, pulling out file cabinets. "Why me, though? Really? There must have been other desperate people your lawyer could have found." Daniel met my eyes. "Wesley said you were different. He showed me your background working 3 jobs, sacrificing your own future to keep your family together, never complaining. He said you were the kind of person who keeps promises, even when it's hard. That's what I needed. Someone with integrity." "Integrity," I repeated bitterly. That's a funny word to use while asking someone to help you commit fraud. Fair point. We sat in tense silence, watching the monitors. Hours crawled by. The intruders searched every room, growing more frustrated when they couldn't find whatever they were looking for. Harrison followed them calmly, picking up the messes they made, acting like this was a normal Tuesday evening. Finally, around dawn, they gave up. We watched them regroup in the main hall, clearly angry, before heading toward the front door. "They're leaving," I said, relief flooding through me. But as the last man reached the door, he stopped. He pulled something from his pocket and stuck it to the wall, a note. Then he left, and the mansion fell quiet. Daniel was already on his feet, heading for the hidden door. "Come on." We made our way back through the passages, emerging into the hallway near the main entrance. Harrison was there, looking tired but composed. He pulled the note off the wall and handed it to Daniel. Daniel read it, and all the color drained from his face. His hand started shaking. "What?" I asked. "What does it say?" He handed it to me without speaking. The note was simple, typed on plain white paper. "We know about the girl's sister. Grace, age 15. Walks home alone from school every day at 3 p.m. Maybe she knows what we need to know." I looked at the grandfather clock in the hall. It was 2:47 p.m. Grace got out of school in 13 minutes. I didn't think. I just ran. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip my phone as I pulled it from my pocket. Daniel was right behind me, shouting something, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Grace!" I jabbed at her contact, nearly dropping the phone. Pick up! Pick up! Pick up! Daniel's hand closed around my wrist, stopping me before I could hit the call button. Wait. Don't. Are you insane? I tried to pull away from him, but his grip was firm. They're going after my sister, and if she's already being watched, if they're already near her, a panicked phone call from you will tell them we know their plan. It could make things worse. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to hit him. Grace was in danger because of me, because I'd agreed to this terrible arrangement, and now Daniel was telling me I couldn't even warn her? Then what do we do? My voice cracked. Daniel was already moving, pulling me toward the back of the mansion. Harrison, get the car. Not the usual one, the SUV we keep in the back garage. The unmarked one. Harrison nodded and disappeared. Daniel kept pulling me along, heading toward what looked like a mudroom. He grabbed a jacket and threw it at me. Put this on. We're leaving now. We'll never make it in time. Her school is across the city, and it's almost 3. I know. Daniel was pulling up something on his phone, his fingers moving fast. When I set up this arrangement, I had Harrison track everyone in your family. For protection, I can see where Grace is right now. Part of me should have been angry about that. More invasion of privacy, more control I hadn't agreed to. But right now, I didn't care. Where is she? Still at school. We have a chance. Harrison pulled up in a black SUV that looked nothing like the luxury cars I'd seen in the main garage. Daniel pushed me into the passenger seat and climbed behind the wheel. We were moving before I even had my seatbelt on. Daniel drove like someone who didn't care about speed limits or traffic laws. We flew through residential streets, cut across parking lots, ran red lights when he could see they were clear. I gripped the door handle and watched the clock on the dashboard tick closer to 3 o'clock. 2:54 p.m. 2:57 p.m. 3:01 p.m. She's moving, Daniel said, his eyes flicking between the road and his phone mounted on the dashboard. She left school. She's walking. Which way? Is she going home? No. His voice was tight. She's heading east, toward the industrial district. That's not her normal route. My stomach twisted. Why would she go that way? I don't know. Daniel called someone, putting it on speaker. I need eyes on the area near 15th and Garrett Street. Black van, possibly following a teenage girl. A voice crackled back. Copy that. We have units in the area. Who was that? I asked. Private security. They work for Blackwood Industries. Daniel took a turn so fast the tires squealed. I called them when we left the house. The phone crackled again. Sir, we have a visual on a black van. It's moving slowly along Garrett, about 2 blocks behind a girl matching the description. My heart stopped. That's her. That's Grace. Daniel pressed harder on the gas pedal. We were close now. I could see the old warehouses and abandoned factories that marked the industrial district. This area had been dying for years, with more buildings empty than occupied. Why would Grace come here? There. I pointed ahead. I could see her Grace with her purple backpack, walking alone with her headphones in. She was completely unaware of the danger, and behind her, moving like a predator stalking prey, was the black van. Daniel didn't slow down. He accelerated, cutting between Grace and the van, just as it started to speed up. I threw open my door before we'd even completely stopped. Grace! She spun around, yanking out her headphones, her eyes wide with confusion. Lily? What are you? I grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the SUV. Get in. Now. Don't ask questions. Just get in. For once in her life, Grace didn't argue. Maybe she heard the fear in my voice. Maybe she saw the black van behind us, now speeding away, knowing they'd lost their chance. Whatever the reason, she climbed into the back seat. Daniel was already driving again before I'd even closed my door. Grace was breathing hard in the back seat, looking between us with frightened eyes. Lily, what's going on? Why are you, and who is this? Where's your husband? It's complicated, I said, my own hands still shaking. Grace, why were you walking through the industrial district? That's nowhere near home. I was meeting someone. She looked down at her phone. A girl from school messaged me. She said she had information about you. About your marriage. She said I should come alone if I wanted to know the truth. Daniel swore under his breath. Show me the messages. Grace handed her phone forward. Daniel glanced at them while driving, his jaw tight. These came from a fake account. Someone was luring you out there. But why? Grace's voice was small now, scared. What's happening, Lily? You're scaring me. I turned in my seat to look at my sister. She was still in her school uniform, her long, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking younger than 15, and so vulnerable it made my chest ache. I need to tell you something, I said. And you need to trust me, okay? The marriage I'm in. It's more complicated than I told you and Mom. For the next 10 minutes, while Daniel drove us back to the mansion, I explained as much as I could. Not everything I couldn't tell her about Theodore being dead. That was too dangerous, but enough. I told her the marriage was a business arrangement, that there were people who wanted to hurt us because of it, that she needed to be careful. Grace listened, her face getting paler with every word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You did this for Dad, she finally said. For his surgery. Yes. And now these people are threatening us to get to you? It looks that way. Grace looked out the window, processing. Then she turned to Daniel, who'd been silent this whole time. You're not actually old, are you? Despite everything, I almost smiled. My sister was too smart for her own good. No, Daniel said. I'm not. I knew something was weird at the wedding. Old people don't move like you did. She crossed her arms. So what happens now? Are we safe? I'm going to make sure you're safe, Daniel said. All of you. I have security that can watch your apartment. Make sure no one gets close to you or your mother. We pulled up to the mansion. Harrison was waiting at the door, looking relieved to see us. But his expression changed as we got closer. Sir, there's been a development. What now? Daniel asked, sounding exhausted. Mr. Wesley, the lawyer who arranged the marriage. He's been found dead in his office. The world seemed to tilt. Dead? How? They're saying it was self-inflicted. But the timing is. Harrison trailed off meaningfully. Daniel's face went hard. There's no such thing as coincidence. Someone wanted him silent. We all stood there in the mansion's entrance, the weight of everything pressing down on us. Grace moved closer to me, and I put my arm around her. Sir, Harrison said quietly, there's something else. You received an email. Encrypted. No sender. I think you should see it immediately. Daniel followed Harrison inside to his office. Grace and I waited in the hallway, neither of us speaking. A few minutes later, Daniel came back out, his phone in his hand. His face was ashen. What is it? I asked. He didn't answer. He just turned his phone toward me and pressed play on a video. The footage showed Mr. Wesley's office, but it was from 2 weeks ago before our wedding. The lawyer was meeting with someone whose face I couldn't see, but I could hear their voice clearly. Make sure the girl signs everything. When Blackwood's fraud is exposed, she'll take the fall, and we'll have everything. The voice was professional, calm, familiar. It took me a moment to place it. Then my blood ran cold. It was Dr. Hammond, my father's doctor, the man who'd been treating him for 2 years, the man who'd recommended the expensive surgery, the man I'd trusted completely. I played the video 3 more times, each time hoping I'd heard wrong, but the voice never changed. It was definitely Dr. Hammond, the same calm, professional tone he'd used when explaining my father's condition, when reassuring me the surgery would save his life, when looking me in the eye and telling me he'd do everything he could to help. He'd been lying the whole time. No. I shook my head, backing away from Daniel's phone like it might bite me. No, that doesn't make sense. Dr. Hammond has been treating my father for 2 years. Why would he? Money, Daniel said quietly. He was typing on his phone, searching for something. It's always money with people like Vincent. What does your uncle have to do with my father's doctor? Daniel turned his phone toward me again, showing me a news article. It was from 5 years ago, a society wedding announcement. Dr. Richard Hammond married Margaret Blackwood, Vincent's younger sister. The room spun. I sat down hard on the nearest chair, Grace's hand finding mine and squeezing tight. He's family, I whispered. He's Vincent's brother-in-law. Which means Vincent has had access to your family's medical information for years. Daniel's voice was controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. He knew about your father's condition. He probably knew the moment it got serious enough to be expensive. The pieces were falling into place, and each one made me feel sicker. The surgery, the timing, the cost, all planned. Daniel knelt down in front of me, making sure I was looking at him. Lily, your father was sick. That part was real. But I'd bet anything that Dr. Hammond made it worse. Delayed treatments, prescribed medications that didn't quite work, made everything more complicated and expensive than it needed to be, to make me desperate enough to accept any help. My voice sounded hollow. He used my father. He used my family's suffering as bait. Grace made a small sound beside me. I'd almost forgotten she was there, hearing all of this. I pulled her closer. Why, though? I asked. Why go through all this trouble? Daniel stood up and started pacing. Vincent needed me exposed as a fraud, but if he just revealed that Theodore was dead, I'd face charges. Yes, but I could potentially fight them, claim I was protecting the company, acting in good faith. It would be messy, but not impossible. But if there's a scapegoat... Exactly. If there's a young woman who married Theodore right before the truth came out, someone who clearly benefited financially from the arrangement, someone whose family doctor just happened to be connected to Vincent. Daniel stopped pacing and looked at me. You become the con artist, the gold digger who manipulated a sick old man. Maybe you even killed him. Who knows what story Vincent would spin. And with Lily facing criminal charges, you'd be discredited too, Grace said quietly. We both looked at her. She shrugged. What? I watch a lot of crime shows. If Lily goes down for fraud, everyone questions whether you were in on it. The company gets thrown into chaos. Vincent swoops in, as the responsible family member, to save everything. Your sister's smart, Daniel said. I know, I replied automatically. Then the full weight of it all hit me. The lawyer, Mr. Wesley. He was killed because he knew too much? Probably developed a conscience, or wanted more money to keep quiet. Either way, he became a liability. Daniel pulled up another screen on his phone. I'm looking at his phone records. He called Dr. Hammond 3 times in the days before he died. I thought about Mr. Wesley sitting next to me in that hospital waiting room, offering me a lifeline when I was drowning. Had he known even then that he was setting me up to take the fall? Or had he genuinely been trying to help, only to realize later what Vincent was really planning? It didn't matter now. He was dead. So what do we do? I asked. Vincent has been planning this for months. He has doctors and lawyers and probably a dozen other people working for him. What chance do we have? Daniel's expression changed. The exhaustion and guilt I'd seen earlier were gone, replaced by something harder, determined. We beat him at his own game, he said. Harrison, get me everything. Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence we have, and set up a board meeting for tomorrow morning. Harrison raised an eyebrow. Sir, are you sure? Tomorrow morning. Every board member must attend. Tell them Theodore Blackwood has an important announcement about the company's future. Daniel, what are you planning? I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time since this nightmare started, he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was confident. I'm planning to tell the truth. All of it. Before Vincent can. The next 12 hours were a blur. Daniel and Harrison gathered documents, made phone calls, and prepared for the board meeting. I stayed up with them, watching as they built the case piece by piece. Financial records showing payments from Vincent to Dr. Hammond's medical practice. Phone logs connecting Vincent to the men who broke into the mansion. The video of Mr. Wesley talking about framing me. Bank transfers that proved my father's surgery costs had been inflated by nearly 40% above normal rates for that procedure. Vincent thought he was being careful, Daniel explained as dawn broke. But he underestimated how much evidence he'd leave behind. And he definitely underestimated Harrison's ability to track it all. Harrison allowed himself a small smile. I've been documenting Vincent's activities for years, sir. Your grandfather suspected his brother would try something eventually. At 9 o'clock in the morning, we drove to Blackwood Industries headquarters. Grace stayed at the mansion with a security team. I wasn't taking any more chances with her safety. I wore a simple black dress and kept my head high, even though I was terrified. The boardroom was on the top floor. All glass walls and expensive furniture. 15 board members sat around a massive table, looking curious and impatient. And at the far end, looking smug and confident, was Vincent Blackwood. He was older than Daniel, maybe in his 50s, with grey hair and sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't twisted with greed. When he saw me walk in beside Daniel, his eyes narrowed. "Theodore," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "And your lovely new wife. How unexpected." Daniel wheeled in the chair he'd been using as part of his disguise. He sat down at the head of the table, still wearing the mask and gloves. Every board member was watching. "Thank you all for coming," Daniel said in the raspy old man voice. "I have an important announcement." Vincent leaned forward. "Before you begin, brother, perhaps we should discuss your recent marriage. There are questions about—" "You're right," Daniel interrupted. "There are questions. So let me answer them." He reached up and removed his mask. The room erupted. Board members jumped to their feet. Someone gasped. Vincent's face went from smug to shocked to furious in the space of 3 seconds. "My name is Daniel Blackwood," Daniel said in his real voice, clear and strong. "Theodore Blackwood was my grandfather. He died 2 years ago, and I've been maintaining the deception to protect this company from corporate raiders, specifically from my Uncle Vincent, who is currently under investigation for conspiracy, fraud, and potentially murder." "This is insane!" Vincent shouted. "You've been committing fraud, impersonating a dead man. Guards, arrest him!" But the security guards didn't move. They were Daniel's people, not Vincent's. Daniel pressed a button, and screens around the room lit up with evidence. The video of Mr. Wesley, bank records, phone logs, everything. "You plan to expose me," Daniel said, his eyes locked on Vincent. "But you made one critical mistake. You involved innocent people. You manipulated a young woman's dying father to use her as your scapegoat. And my grandfather anticipated exactly this kind of behavior." Harrison stepped forward with a document. "This is Theodore Blackwood's actual will. The full version. Not the edited copy Vincent has been working from. It includes a clause that none of you have seen." He read it aloud. "If Vincent Blackwood is found to have engaged in fraud, conspiracy, or criminal activity in an attempt to seize control of Blackwood Industries, he is permanently barred from any inheritance, company position, or financial benefit from the Blackwood estate." Vincent's face went pale. "You can't prove. We have recordings of your men breaking into my home. We have financial records of your payments to Dr. Hammond. We have testimony from the lawyer you had killed." Daniel stood up. "It's over, Vincent." The board voted unanimously. Vincent was removed from all positions and banned from the company. Criminal charges would follow. As security escorted a screaming Vincent from the building, I felt Daniel's hand find mine under the table. I squeezed back. Later, at the mansion, Grace bounced into the room where Daniel and I were finally resting. "So what happens now? Do you two get divorced and go your separate ways?" Daniel and I looked at each other. We'd survived something impossible together. We'd protected each other when we could have run. We'd been honest when lying would have been easier. "I don't know," I said slowly. "Daniel?" He smiled, a real smile this time. "I spent 2 years pretending to be someone else. The only time I felt like myself was when I was with you. Even when I was yelling at you. Especially then." Grace made a gagging sound. "You two are gross, but also kind of perfect." She wasn't wrong. We had 11 months left on our contract. But maybe, just maybe, we could turn something that started as a lie into something real. My father recovered fully. Dr. Hammond lost his medical license and faced criminal charges. Vincent went to trial. And me? I stayed in the mansion. With Daniel. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to.